Am I driving it or are you?
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Tuesday edition of our news briefing on all things Gen AI. We've got several of us in the house today, so it'll be a nice, lively discussion. We will let you know if today's news is essential, important, or optional to tune into. We've got some use cases to talk about, some in product development, some in helping scientists write up their research, and a few more meta announcements. We'll see if we think that they are as important as their one last week. And let's go ahead and dive in. Ankaj.
Thanks, David. So the first one that we have for today comes from In Silico Medicine. In Silico, we have been following In Silico for some time now. They are doing some great things with GenAI in drug discovery, and now they have launched Dora, a research assistant for generation of scientific content.
That's right. They have the first Gen AI produced drug that was in phase 2 trials as of 6 or 8 months ago. I'm not sure if they've progressed at this point. But John, what do you think about this announcement and what are they up to now?
Yeah, I thought this is very interesting. This shows how they have a very specifically trained model to help them in the generation of scientific papers. I looked at the scientific paper underneath it, and I used to do that for a living back when I was an academic. And it's well crafted, relatively short paper. I gave this an optional as a model tuned for a particular domain. Certainly is an important vein of activity in the context of any academic institution and or science-based firm like a pharmaceutical firm, because these papers are incredibly important for gathering support, spreading their ideas, giving legitimacy for the products and services out in the marketplace. It's famous for its not an academic exercise, although I hate that phrase, because the academy brought us physics and the atomic bomb and genetics, but anyway, and the internet. So optional.
All right, optional. Any other thoughts or rating, differentiating?
Optional, but I thought that it is interesting how much new IP would be filed as a result of these AI assistants.
Sure.
I think the flood will open, but
Right.
optional, yeah.
All right, we will go optional on this one. Everyone's a little quiet. We'll see if we can ramp it up on the next article and get everyone excited. Although I doubt it because it's about accounting.
I was going to say we needed Tim for that last one. He would have gotten excited about that.
All right, Ankaj, what do we have here?
Well, the next one comes from KPMG. So KPMG, they have a audit platform called KPMG Clara, and now they have added GenAI integration into it.
Yeah, I mean, reading the bullet points of what this can do didn't seem that exciting to me. But Paul, what did you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is an area that we've talked a lot about professional service firms being in the crucible in that top right of our wins quadrant, where Gen AI will radically change economics and value add. And audit's clearly one of them. I think if you paid the same amount of audit this year as you did 3 years ago, you were overpaying. So I think this is a great step in that direction. I think the use cases are pretty common. I was very interested in I don't think we know, or I haven't read what the technology, which LLM they're using underneath the Clara model that they've developed, and I didn't see the model here. But for our readers, this is optional and to be expected. And if they have an auditor not using tools like this, that is now the exception and the outliner.
Yeah, I'd agree, Paul. It's 3 basic but really good, effective use cases. It seems like basically they have 3 prompts that they figured out how to use with a model, and they're just sort of pointing out that they're using it. So I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, I'm sure they've done a lot on the data security side, John. So I'm sure that's pretty extensive.
Oh yeah, yeah. And I was texting this morning with a friend of mine who was vice chairman at PwC when I was there, and Yes, I mean, the thing you got to remember is the regulators play a big role here, and as do there's an extensive analysis PwC did on audit time spent, and only about a third of stuff they thought was automatable. So the other 2/3 are interacting with clients and gathering data at the clients, which is often a human exercise. You know, hey, can you get me the financial data? Hey, can you get me this? All that stuff. So interesting, but I think is absolutely essential to marginal productivity, and especially in an oligopoly like the big four are an oligopoly, and if you think about an oligopoly, price is usually set by the least efficient competitor who's still in business, because they give the pricing umbrella. So whoever's the least efficient competitor, the other competitors, their marginal cost sets the floor for pricing, because they can't go below that, and most of the time the other people in an oligopoly will take that as a price floor and then take the rest in margin. So what that does is it means that anybody who automates first gets differential profits. That allows them to attract more talent, because talent is your biggest expense in these firms. And so I think there's a doom loop for people who don't adopt this, and there's a virtuous loop for people who do. In an oligopolistic market with four players, I made some predictions some time ago. There'll be 2 winners and 2 losers. And KPMG used to be in the loser category, but we will see.
Well, and John, I know we're relating an optional one, but the talent magnet, I mean, the extent that they are ahead of the other ones, and young talent who love audits want to work with GenAI,
Yeah.
big talent magnet for them.
I mean, my experience at PwC is that in any population, I think there are, 10% of really, really smart, ambitious people who will kind of do the Shawshank thing, how he had to crawl through a river of whatever to get out, they will do they're high EQ, and they will do anything for predictability. And audit, in my opinion, is the only place left in the global economy where I can tell you where you will be in 10 years if you're successful. Can't do it in the law, can't do it in medicine, can't do it in priesthood anymore. It's really interesting. So the smart people who are willing to trade off freedom for predictability, audit is very, very attractive and will continue to be. So they have a great talent pool.
All right. But we're going out.
So, David, did we make it exciting?
For discussing audit, yes.
Audit's cool, man. Once you really understand it, if you want really interesting and fun, the tax people are outrageous. They're so crazy. It's not the people who do the compliance stuff, but the people who come up with these new tax structures. They're really fun.
All right, but we are still going optional on this, correct?
Yes. And tax people also wear the loudest shirts, Hawaiian shirts, stuff like that as well.
Off hours, you mean?
No. One guy, the guy who discovered the way to help Gillette use offshore earnings to buy, P&G to use offshore earnings to buy Gillette. He basically found that $9 billion of capital. That guy wore Hawaiian shirts to work, but nobody cared because he found $9 billion. Right?
Exactly. There are levels at which you can wear whatever you want. He sounds like he's definitely at that one. Yes. All right. We will go optional, but good for you, KPMG, for taking yourself slightly out of John's doghouse. All right. What do we have next?
Okay. The next one comes from MIT Sloan Management Review, and it talks about how GenAI can be used in product development.
Right. Yes. We had 3 little use cases in this article. What do you think, Luda?
I was between optional and important, and decided on important. Indeed, there are 3 use cases. It talks about enhancing creativity in design workflows, and goes through how it is done, and how the various tools are available to do that, and GenAI for customer insights and concept validation, also some tools and examples, and LLMs as a natural interface to complex design tools like PCB designs, chip designs, and more complex engineering tasks. So I think it is important because where Gen AI will have a tremendous impact. It's in product development, new concepts, and introducing new products faster to market. The data cited here is 50% cycle time reduction to introduce new product, 40%. So it's a massive improvement in getting those products to the market. So I think it's a great upper pocket article to keep internally to demonstrate that Gen AI can have real significant impact on product development.
All right, we've got an important vote. Any disagreement or additional insights here? John? You're on mute.
I was going to go for important for sure. If you just look at what's in front of us here, on the right-hand side in the middle paragraph, that's the only full paragraph on the right-hand side. Notice here, typically takes a human designer to create a working board an average of more than 80%. Has improved it by more than 80%. Think about that for a minute. 80%. And they're in a wins business. That's amazing. And then you look later, it's complex Siemens products. One of the things that definitely important, beautiful. I mean, the productivity statistics in here, and I imagine they don't give a lot of detail. It's just straight up labor productivity or speed. Well, so it's kind of a narrow definition, but a good one. And fantastic improvements, anywhere from 20 to 80%. In addition, you want to talk about something that's going to give even more power to capital over labor. If you see here, we see the same finding we've seen many times, which is novices speed up into productive workers. That means labor's power is going to go down unless you're really deep in AI. Unless you're pushing, if you're working in place, unless you're pushing the edge of productivity by understanding how to use these power tools, what's going to happen is the low end folks are going to come up and chase you faster. And if you're just, average productivity in the middle or top, and you're not pushing the top end of productivity for you or your team, you're going to have a lot less power in the labor market. So it's something for every professional to think about.
Yeah, I agree with you. I will say, as somebody writing a lot of pieces like this behind the scenes, these productivity numbers are most of the time. These companies aren't doing scientific studies on that. I have no doubt that this is accelerating productivity, but I have stopped paying attention to the figures after doing a lot of writing with companies and seeing where these actually come from. But totally agree with all of your points.
Another thing to add, it's productivity improvements, all right. Agree, but there's a massive acceleration of revenue potential here, because if you introduce a product 6 months earlier, right, a good product, you just got the revenue acceleration for 6 months for that product. It is a potential huge revenue improvement. That's why I'm for companies. That's why it's very important when it shifts from just productivity to productivity and a revenue enhancement.
Yeah, I agree with that, because you're competing in time. A lot of times in the sales process, if I can come back to you, twice as fast with just as good, I usually win the bid. And not usually, but in many settings. The other thing, David, I hear you about the lack of productivity, the lack of rigor in productivity studies, but I don't know how much you've dealt with, draconian owners, like when Jack Welch was at GE, and if you talk to private equity owners. I was talking to one guy who was working with private equity, and he said, we went into a parking lot, and the parking lot was full. And the guy said, my friend who was working for the private equity firm, he said, you know what David would do here? David was the owner. He didn't own that company yet. He did buy it eventually. Said, you know what David would do here? He'd look at this parking lot and said, there's too many people. He'd cut 10%. And if nothing broke, he'd cut 10% more. If nothing broke, he'd keep cutting until something breaks, and then he'd back off a little. So forget the productivity statistics. Private equity is going to give him the tools and say, get it done. And if you can't, we'll get somebody else in there.
Yeah, totally hear you on that.
Yeah, go back to Jack, right? So he would, when valuing the productivity, obviously he was very much into it and minding it very deeply, but he would give preference to the time war because it's differentiating and outfacing. So if you, in fact, cut cycle time on the product development and get it out the market first, right? You are now the leader. And that's was critical for him. He would put more resources into that versus cutting and getting productivity improvements.
Yes. By the way, I think Jack Welch is among the worst leaders we've ever had. I think Ginny Rometty may be the worst, but Jack Welch is right near the bottom, and we can talk about that later.
David, is there opinion subject that John doesn't have a good, interesting opinion on?
It doesn't seem to be that way. That might
Just one quick thing: if you're going to be 1, 2, or 3 in an established industry within the time window of less than 10 years, that immediately means you're not going to ever innovate. Period. End of sentence.
Yeah. I worked under Ginny Rometty when I was at IBM, was during her time, and it was during the time that they were definitely flailing, although a very solid company culturally, and that's one of the things that I think keeps them going.
Oh, now that she's gone, I think they're on the rise. But she took one of the great brands of the world in a growing market and shrank it and gave it less power. Other than that, she did a heck of a job.
All right. We're going important on this one. What do we have next?
Hey, the next one comes from Meta. So Meta has introduced SAM 2, and with this tool, you can segment anything, whether it is video or images.
Yeah, Meta's just cranking right now. What do you think, Adam?
This is super cool. It's great to see that they've done this. They've also released it under open source. I'd say it could be considered essential if you look on a long enough time horizon. It is a fairly significant piece of news out of Meta, and for them to have it usable under the Apache license, they're really trying to put the heat on in terms of their competition having to start giving away better products or out innovate them. But this is a really interesting model. I would probably say important news. It's something to be aware of and pay attention to, but it allows these things called masklets that are basically the AI trying to identify an object, right? SAM stands for segment anything model. And to segment means to separate it, like you can see in the video, the shirt and the pants. So they made a segment anything model, which was SAM, and this is SAM 2, the newer version of it. And what you can do is the model will identify an object, but then at a different frame, you can pick the object again, and it can have basically like a memory of what it's identified that it works with along the way in future frames. So it very quickly can retrain itself on the fly to identify exactly the objects that a user is looking to identify. So it has some pretty far-reaching significance in terms of reducing the cost of understanding the world around us and the world we're generating in video. They're already doing a ton of business with the first model in transcription and annotation services, where you need to extract metadata from visual analysis, whether that's videos or pictures. So this is a big deal, and it's gonna make some significant waves in the market. It's also not something an AI leader could exactly do much with in the next 6 months, maybe. Potentially more, although they'll probably start seeing products coming to market that they could purchase that have integrated it.
Yes, and then one thing I will add, and I think Michael, one of our viewers, was alluding to this, is they've released the data set for this one. So
Yeah.
I haven't seen a lot of that, right? So this one is truly open source. It's funny, I was just having a banter with somebody on LinkedIn in response to the comic I had put up this week, which had Meta News as part of it. And he was asking, I was talking about how Llama 3.1 is open-ish, right? Because they don't have the data sets released with that. And the person was asking, what do we expect to see more of these open-ish or whatever? And I said, yeah, it's going to be rare when we see the data sets released. And then sure enough, like 2 days later, Meta releases the data set with one of theirs, but still is rare. So you're on important on this one, Adam. What do others think? What do you think, Paul?
Yeah, I agree. Important as well, and I think less around the applicability in the immediate near term, but just another indication for the AI leader of how radically different the opportunity curve is changing here. I mean, this was something we weren't even talking about 12 months ago. So that's one point. I think the second is, Adam, your open source point. I mean, Meta is really starting to push pressure. John and others have been talking about own your own intelligence. So you're still getting a lot more of these big services firms around the open source movement here. It's really going to put some price pressure on some of the closed models out there that are pretty high in many cases. So I support important.
Yeah, let me make the case. Oh, go ahead, Luda. Sorry.
No, I do too. I was actually thinking essential because it's a massive model. It's a massive improvement from their prior. Everybody deals with images. Everybody, for media or for marketing, whatnot. So I think it's bordering on essential actually, because
Yeah, Luda, I said the time horizon is what, like, how far out do we want to look, and then I could see how it could be essential as well.
Yeah, but I think important is certainly has to be flagged as something to watch.
Yeah, I mean, I can make the case for essential. And to your question, Adam, I think it's a combination of time and inevitability. And I think that it's inevitable that folks running models pretty much of any sort are going to use this technology because I'm reminded of the phrase from Autodesk, which was read, interpret, write. Right? That's how they look at the world. So the ability, and I think this and visual and voice are going to be sources. People talk about running out of data. We haven't run out of data. It's that thinking. It's like the Club of Rome when I was a kid in the '70s. Said we're going to run out of oil, peak oil. We're never going to find any more oil. Baloney. Stuff like this now takes. And if you look in the paper, the ability to sublet mask stuff improves almost by an order of magnitude using this new model compared to the previous models. So it's like 4 seconds instead of 28 or something. So not quite an order of magnitude, but so the ability to train on the back of this. And then you think what happens if you have visual continuity, that informs other dimensions like interference and physics and so forth, as well as storytelling. And just think about what's happening with masks. So they get tighter and tighter mask slits, and then they have continuity over time. What you're essentially doing is being able to take any video and then inductively create not a complete physical model, but the beginnings of one. And then you start combining that with other kinds of models, like the things that, folks at Siemens and so forth have. And so then you have an n-dimensional description of that reality that's computable. And it's huge. That's why they say it's huge for robotics. It's going to be huge for design. And so I think it's a whole, back to the thing, why essential? Not now, but yes, now for some things, certainly for entertainment and for communication, but in a very, I think it's going to be a substrate of things moving in the physical world. For example, I mean, just imagine what you could do this with medical imagery. You saw a little bit in there, right? You're going to highlight these things. So I think it's inevitable. It's powerful. It's the company with the most users in the world. Data, open source. My goodness, essential.
And add military, John. Military use cases as well, yeah.
And as Michael's pointed out, Novak, there's going to be a ton of the companies are going to have to get smart on this because of the attack vectors along this and deep fakes and watermarking and all that other stuff's going to get very interesting.
Almost as exciting as auditing.
I mean, you make a mistake about it. I think someday.
Yeah,
I have a lot of respect for the auditors. Auditing is one of the few professions, if you get it wrong, you end up in jail. Okay? No McKinsey consultant never went to jail. Even the guy who leaked, just the guy who leaked inside information about Goldman Sachs.
One of them did.
So John, I guess
he did something like blatantly illegal, but the PwC partners that missed $1 billion on the Satyam audit, those guys are sitting in an Indian jail right now. Okay.
Okay, essential then.
Sounds like we've elevated this one to essential, so we will certainly go forward with that. And I have to say, when I was in business school, I never expected, when I had to, you have to take mandatory accounting classes, right? A couple of them. And I was like, oh, Jesus, I am like 100% Word guy. I totally loved it to the point where I was like, I could do this for a living. So I'm teasing on the audit, but this is definitely cooler. I mean, just look at it. All right, essential. Let's go on to we still have two more, actually. We're talking a lot today. Here we go.
So the next one comes from Salesforce. So Salesforce has released mint 1 trillion data set, and it's bound to disrupt the AI industry.
All right. Another data set release. Luda.
Well, it's a massive data set, 1 billion text tokens and some number of images. It certainly will improve the depth of our models. I didn't get a sense that they've told us where it's coming from. So that's a question mark for me. So I was between optional and important, ended up on optional until more information is available. What's in it, how it can be used. Yeah, optional for me.
One vote for optional. What'd you think, Adam?
Yeah, I think I'm probably in the same boat. Sorry, I was prepping on the next one. We're going to be going first on. So
we'll just let John. I'm sure that he has an opinion.
Yeah, I'm going optional on this one. I empathize with, I don't know, empathize. I feel bad for whoever's in charge of AI at Salesforce. It's like, nobody's using Einstein. You got to make some noise here. Where are we in this whole thing? Anyway, that's probably unfair. Look, I think it's a great new data set. I agree with Luda. Love to know where it came from. I can imagine, right, that they're in the middle of a bunch of interesting data flows. But I would give it optional till we see what it helps you build.
All right.
So it's 1 trillion text tokens and 3.4 billion images. Massive.
And complex documents. I'm on the board of a company that where we're dealing with this very issue about how do you inductively read orders, very varied orders coming from different modalities. So yes, I think it's going to be important and trend. But
yeah, optional for now.
Optional.
And also interesting, they said quietly released. There's no announcements, and it's really quiet. The question is, right? Yeah, it's a massive data set. They could have put it up, and I think the issue is where the data comes from. So they couldn't quite defend it, but they released it. So we'll see.
Yeah. All right. Interesting, but optional. We have
I
one.
was going to say, so is it just bigger than like the 480 billion or whatever OpenAI is using? Is that sort of the big news? Is that pretty much all they're saying there? Like, yeah. I guess I was trying to read more into it, but there aren't really many details. Is that
exactly? So it's hard to judge, and that's why let's leave it be for now.
All right, we will leave it be, and we will move on to the final article of the day.
The final article comes again from Meta, and it talks about the AI studio that Meta has released and how you can create your own custom AI with it.
Yes, so we know that Character AI has a similar offering and is a very, very popular app. And I think Meta was sniffing around for potentially buying them. I know some big tech companies where I can't remember which name it is. But now they have created their own thing here. Adam, what do you think about this?
Yeah, I think I'm going to land on optional for this. So it's just a really easy interface, whether it's an Instagram or just on the Meta platform, to create a chat bot that's like a personality, either yourself or some fictional character that you maybe want to create. In some ways, it's not different from the concept of like a customer service chatbot. But I think this is more like targeting retail, the Facebook and Instagram crowd. So I'm not sure like to what extent I'd say businesses need to be thinking about how they're going to integrate this into their customer facing model or their marketing or so it's kind of cool. And I think it's going to spread like wildfire, people making basically little chatbots that have a certain function or capability, like one that can recommend recipes in a certain town or, those sorts of things. But for the AI leader, it's probably optional.
Yeah, I would say that there are implications for marketing, because the other element to this that they talk about is the fact that now you can basically create an interface where when people are messaging you, you basically have the AI respond, and it can converse with the person back in a back and forth manner. So I think marketers would potentially take advantage of that. I mean, you could see how that could go off the rails pretty easily as well. So people might.
Yeah, I guess I'd have to get under the hood and look at what you can do in terms of uploading knowledge or training it to actually be able to see what extent you can trust it to be the face or the brand or speak on behalf of your business, right? We've already seen people get into trouble with that.
That's what I'm saying.
So to what extent can I ensure that it's going to represent GAI Insights, for example?
Yeah,
right. That's what I guess we'll have to see.
Yeah, it sounded like you could do like some light training on it, like it's basically you interface.
Yeah, but you want to trust your business to give it a personality, I mean, like you're like, no, these are the questions, these are the answers. There's certain things we want you to say, right?
Yeah, it kind of sounds like though the beginnings of we're all going to have our AIs out there talking to
our little agent representing us.
World, right? Yeah, I'm going to send my AI over to this AI, and
we won't be joining these calls, man. They'll have all of our opinions locked down.
That's right. Any other opinions on this one?
I would recommend we read it as important, just for all these reasons we just said. It's a very simple but extremely powerful tool that has all this stuff we just talked about, SAM 2 behind it. It's open source. It can be massive. So our leaders should be aware of it because it can be applied to B2B, B2C. So it's not yet, but it's the beginning of it, and it's a massive potential. So I would say important.
Yeah, I would say important, and now you guys are making me think it should be essential. Michael's Novak's asking, could it become the interface for LLM agentic architecture agents? I think absolutely. I mean, I think it's going to be a big part of that. Look, this is Meta. It's they're setting the pace, and the AI is the new UI, right? So regardless of whether or not you want to represent your company this way, for all the robust reasons you had, this is going to be the expectation. I'm reminded of when the internet came along. I was talking to senior executives, and they're saying, well, how is this relevant to me? I said, here's at least one way, which is that you're going to be expected to have answers 24 hours a day, and people will be able to buy anything, anywhere, anytime. And they're like, yeah. And now look where we are. I think this is they're going to they're totally raising the bar in terms of expectations of the UI, at least.
All right.
And they're paving the way to get it to mobile very easily. The ease of use here is critical. You don't have to do your own AI, but you can use that to represent you in a personalized way out there, right? On every mobile. I think this is massive. Yeah. I'm not sure about essential yet because we're all dreaming, but in the AI world, dreams come true very quickly.
That's a really great way for us to leave this off. I think we should just end this show right now. Okay, so we're going to go important on that one. I agree, and we've got an important and almost essential from John and Ludus, so we'll go important on that one. Let's see where we ended up for it.
Well, and I think we've got a quote for Luda. We need to stick it on the internet. That's the dreams come true.
Very Disney.
All right, we've got an essential in the middle there. That's the introduction of Meta's SAM. Obviously, the other Meta news we just talked about is important, and we've also got an important on the product development use case article that we discussed. Everything else is optional today, but we did have a lively discussion as always, and it was great. Adam, your Learning Lab was last night. Do you have that up on video, or when might you have that up on video for folks?
Yeah, the 5 minutes with Dr. John and the workshop presentation are both on the YouTube channel now, which is youtube.com/@GAI Insights.
All right. So if you're watching us from YouTube right now, just hop over. You can get a little more of us. And we will see you tomorrow. And have a great day, everybody.